Rabbi Irvin, welcome from California to snowy New York.
Delighted.
And you are going to tell us today about your incredible journey, not from California to New York, but from New York through the Academy into the world. So how did that happen? How did you come upon the Academy?
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to share my story. So in December of this is how I ended up at the Academy. In December of 1969, I was a college senior and was planning to go to graduate school in business. And that month, the first draft lottery took place. Since World War II in the United States. And my number was very low, and it was a very upsetting time. And I phoned my mom, and she had already talked to the family rabbi about how Irv could avoid going to Vietnam. And they thought that the best thing for me would be to apply to rabbinical school. And so that my family rabbi, Howard Hirsch, had been a graduate of the Academy in Trenton, New Jersey, where I grew up and where he was a rabbi. And he recommended that I apply to the Academy. And between December and I guess my interview at the Academy, which I think was like in February, I was classified 1A, fit for going to active duty. And so my future life depended upon my acceptance to the Academy. I didn't apply anyplace else, and I did not plan on filing a conscientious objector's status. And so sometime in the winter of 1970, I guess, I was interviewed in Riverdale by two rabbis, Chaim Pearl and Philip Siegel. Chaim Pearl was at his synagogue in Riverdale, and Philip Siegel, I think, was a conservative rabbi who had written a book on halakha, was at the seminary, and the two rabbis interviewed me, and they said to me, so tell us, why would you like to attend rabbinical school? And I said to them, well, rabbis, I've always wanted to be a rabbi. And I think they said to themselves, that's bullshit. This guy doesn't really want to be a, but we like him enough, we're going to take him. And that's how I ended up at the Academy. And there were 3 other students who were admitted to the Academy then. And that was my journey. That was my beginning of my association with the Academy.
So you plunged in on Rabbi Hirsch's recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know anything about the Academy aside from he had graduated there?
I knew that it was a small school. How small, I didn't really know. I knew it wasn't one of the major seminaries at the time. I did not apply any place else because I was not really prepared to go to rabbinical school. I had helped start the Hillel at where I went to undergraduate school, which was Washington and Jefferson College, Pennsylvania. And I taught Sunday school while I was in college and did a number of other Jewish things, and I loved being Jewish, but I wasn't really aware of what the Academy was about before I applied. I was 21 years old, but the Academy changed my life.
What did it give you, do you think, aside from spiritual safety
mm-hmm.
And physical safety? What was it giving you?
Well, I think I do know it provided physical safety. That's why my grades had to be really good, because they depended on my staying in school. But what the Academy did teach me is something that I've carried with me to this day. I never had it in my life before. And it really taught me what it meant to love learning. Ahavat Torah. In undergraduate school, I was just an average student. I was in college for fun. When I came to the Academy, the Academy taught me to love learning. And I had numerous professors who did that. Chief among them was a man named Rabbi Irvin M. Levy, a man who had been at Princeton, a good friend of Albert Einstein's. Rabbi Levy's wife baked Einstein's birthday cake every year, and when he left Princeton, he taught at the academy, and we became best buddies. There wasn't anything I did. He taught me to appreciate so much about well, what it meant to learn, and that's where I learned, and that's what I learned at the academy. It also helped for my worldview as a Jew. That, I think, was the beginning of it, and that, you know, for a 20-year-old, something that was fundamental. That stayed with me to this day. That and my years in 13 years in the rabbinate, pulpit rabbinate, helped frame the next, you know, decades of my life.
And how would you describe that approach to the world?
Well, that's really clear to me. I think I can articulate that. That it is that I think it's as basic as what Hillel had to say. I mean, that's that basic. You know, if I'm not for myself, you know, who am I? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? And I think that, to me, that's really very simply what it meant is, for me, is to care about being a Jew, stand up for what that means, use the best of that tradition to be an advocate for humanity at large, and then do it. You know, just do it, like Nike in a commercial. Just do it, and that has led me to the world of a Polish Jewish artist named Arthur Szyk, who died more than 60 years ago, whose visual art has really served as a commentary on the world. And both my learning at the academy and my subsequent time in a rabbinate really prepared me, I think, to be aware of, if a person like Arthur Szyk came along, to know what he stood for and to be able to recognize it. And I think that's what my learning had taught me. That was Szyk's value system, and now as an advocate, now as someone who's trying to make this once very famous artist famous again in the world, I think that's what really drives me, because he, you know, articulated through his art what my own value system was and still is.
Now, you went to the academy at the time when it was fairly new.
Yeah.
Not the Middle Ages of it, but the early days
Yeah.
Of the academy.
Yeah.
And it was really trying very hard to be
Mm-hmm.
a pluralist institution,
Mm-hmm.
and to put across the essentials of Jewish values.
Mm-hmm.
Szyk also was transmitting those Jewish values in an imageful
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
How do you transmit? What values did you pick up from your friends that were just Jewish, not one denomination, not another denomination, just Jewish? And how do you use them now?
Well, I mean, Arthur Szyk was not a religious Jew. He was a cultural Jew, but well steeped in Jewish in Jewish tradition. So he could illuminate traditional Hebrew texts and deliver a modern message. And so he was a great lover of the Jewish people. I think that's that love of Torah that I mentioned earlier, and that love of Am Yisrael, which now is reinforced by my identification with this Jewish artist, was also fundamental to my studies at the academy. There I was embraced by Orthodox women teachers. I was embraced by, you know, conservative pulpit rabbis, by Orthodox Talmudic scholars, by liberal Reform rabbis who were sometimes called, I remember we used to call Rabbi Sam Silver, I guess may he rest in peace, this is a long time ago, I presume he's not with us anymore, I'm quite sure. We used to call him Marrying Sam, because we thought he married everyone regardless of whether they were two Jews or not. He was marrying them, and that was really something that that I wasn't accustomed to, and I don't think we really were in the student body, because we sort of with amusement referred to him that way, but it sort of was embracing the spectrum of Jewish life. And I think that I did appreciate as a 20-year-old. I really did know that everyone was of a different, that the academy provided a place where that when the faculty sat down together, people were going to respect other people's views. And that I knew at that time. And I recognized it, and I felt that was an essential part of my education. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but that's sort of what comes to mind. And I'd love to tell you about the people at the school.
Yes, I was just going to say.
Are you ready to get there?
I'm ready for you.
Yeah, I want to tell you that I remember the names of almost all of the faculty members, and there was a connectedness that you had to them. In those days, we paid $500 a year to come to the academy. The faculty was not paid. I remember they hired a woman once to teach Hebrew, and I think she had to be paid, and I think they made an exception. But these were people, and whether one's paid or not doesn't really determine their devotion to the school, to whatever work they're doing, really, at a seminary. But I remember these people with great love. I remember Olivia Baton Jackson, who was an Orthodox woman scholar, taught at Lehman College. She used to knit all the students our yarmulkes. When we came to her home, she would provide the cookies and, I would say, milk, but I guess we had coffee too. And we sat in her home. She taught us Jewish history. She was a Holocaust survivor. She, of course, had her tattoo on her arm and wrote a book called Ellie, I believe, about her. It's her memoirs about her. And I remember just she was beautiful, a beautiful elderly woman. Maybe not so elderly, but she was you could see on her face the radiance. And this was a fulfillment, this woman who came out of the camps and who was now teaching students to be rabbis. I mean, come on, so where do you get that? Or I walk on the street with Irving Levy, and he would tell me personal stories about Einstein and the conversations privately that they would have about the existence of divinity, or you would meet with, Mr. Berger, who was the historian. He was the head of the Jewish division, or one of the librarians at the New York Public Library, and he would come and teach us Jewish history, or the character of a Rabbi Robert Aronowitz, a great lover of our people and lover of the student body, and Steve Leon, who held the school together. Rabbi Leon is in El Paso now. Steve was fundamental in keeping the academy alive. Without him, there wouldn't be an academy. And there were so many other people like that. I mean, these were all people who they meant something. Their lives mattered. They transmitted, their love of our tradition, our people, to us, and then we became the receptacles to pour out to our congregants or our communities, and that's what the academy did. It actually taught us love of being proud and being a proud Jew. I think that's what I got out of it.
You've recently given the academy a wonderful presentation on Shik.
Mm-hmm.
What other things are you doing in connection with the academy or with the alumni over the years?
Well, I think I reconnected with the academy in a very physical way by delivering a presentation about Arthur Szyk last year. I think going back, if I go backwards, I was ordained in 1974, so I'm one of your fossils, and then had two pulpits, one in Forest Hills and one in Burlingame, California. So 13 years as an active rabbi. After that, though, I stayed very much in touch with a number of the students, and I hosted twice in San Francisco alumni conferences, and was thrilled to to plan them. I didn't realize, I thought it was the first, but I just was pointing out that the alumni get-together in California was like the 8th or the 7th or 8th one. But I remember we went to Atlantic City a few times to have rabbinic conferences that were organized by either Eric Milgram or Steve Leon. Eric was a classmate of mine, and we enjoyed many good years traveling on the subway and bus up to Riverdale together. But in 1980, late 80s, I put together an alumni journal for the Academy. I claim that it's the first, so I don't know if it's really, I believe it's the first one, and tried to find out who all the faculty members were at the time. And I was very interested in, I still am, in putting together catalogs and books, and it's my world of antiquarian books today, and chic. But it's pleasant to meet new Academy graduates and alumni, and the idea of being able to share something of my experience at the Academy is very gratifying now.
So what is your hope or vision for the Academy in the future? And what do you see as some of the pluses and minuses of this pluralist education that we offer?
Well, actually, I sort of might internalize that question and say, okay, what is it that I believe in that I believe the Academy could be a bearer of? And I think to that end, I should reconnect with the Academy in terms of your arts and text program that you have, because I believe that my work with Arthur Schick as a visual articulator of the meaning of our people serving as an advocate for ourselves and for humanity at large, and building bridges between people, between communities, between peoples, between nations. Well, we shouldn't be so grandiose to try to do all that, but in our small way we can do that. And I believe that Schick's art should be brought to the attention of people who are in a position to educate others. And I guess a dialogue is to be continued about how that could potentially happen. So I would see that as a way that I would, when I think about the future of a seminary, of the Academy particularly, well, these are my comrades. So why not now think about how I could work with them to help deliver a message which is the Academy's message, which is Schick's message, and which is my own as well.
You entered the Academy at about the beginning time, so you have enough knowledge of what went on before to fill us in on our history.
Okay.
What can you tell us?
I'd love to tell you the history of the Academy as I know it. I entered the Academy, as I mentioned, in 1970. In 1970, after right out of undergraduate school. And really, while the two co-deans at the time were Chaim Pearl of Riverdale and Philip Siegel, who was affiliated with the seminary, JTS, there were other personalities and figures who were very involved in the Academy. One was a man named S. Michael Gelber. And he was ordained by the Academy sometime in the 60s, tall, prominent, distinguished gentleman, very well educated, a great orator, and really a very powerful force to keep the Academy going. He did serve as dean for a brief time, and yet he took under his wings Rabbi Steve Leon, and he very much tried to build a social network among students. We remember going to his apartment somewhere on the Upper East Side in the East 60s. Lottie would serve the hors d'oeuvres, and the idea that she'd put toothpicks in all of them was something that we just laughed about and laughed about. Well, while I was in the Academy, Rabbi Gelber was always looking for a place for us to meet. We never had much money, and so I remember working with Rabbi Robert Waxman, Ruvain Waxman. He became a rabbi in North Carolina, in Wilmington. I believe he just recently retired. But he and I used to write newsletters for the Academy. I remember one headline was Academy Seeks Basement. And I don't think Rabbi Gelber was too pleased. He said we should be looking for a basement in which to meet. But we always saw this as a very satirical newsletter we were publishing. So I'm not sure that went over too well, but we certainly did that. He was a key figure in this school. And I remember he was very good friends with Wolf Kellman at the seminary, Rabbi Kellman. And one of the things they had discussions about all the time was a charter for the academy. And we used to hear about that all the time, about recognition of the school, what it meant to be ordained by our seminary, and how accreditation was so important. So I think he worked with Rabbi Kelman, and looking over some of my notes, I see that a charter was granted in 1975, which made reference, of course, to the Academy's first name, which was the Academy for Higher Jewish Learning before it became the Academy for Jewish Religion. And my understanding of our history was that Rabbis Louis I. Newman, Max Kedushin were among our founders. Louis I. Newman, I knew through my readings to be a very prominent elite rabbi in America at the time, Kedushin from the seminary. My understanding, of course, that the reason the Academy was even founded sometime, I guess, and I'm not sure whether it was late 50s, early 60s, exactly when, was that HUC and JIR were merging. There was a need to maintain the idea of a non-denominational seminary, that people did not want to join the faculty of HUC JIR, and therefore broke off or retained its status to establish or to continue the seminary as a non-denominational place of learning. So those were some of the early days. We did have different deans over time. Our student, I remember one of them didn't work out so well, was with a man named Rabbi Panitz. I forgot his first name. He was with a congregation in New Jersey, and see, requirements were changing all the time for ordination. And I remember there were several very, very fine students in the school, at least fine men, who somehow did not receive their academic or their seminary, their credentials as a rabbi, preacher, and teacher in Israel because of the requirements being changed. And I remember he was ousted sort of through all kinds of ways in which to try to involve the faculty. It was not a pleasant time. Rabbi Steve Leon actually came to our rescue and helped continue the academy through those difficult times. But we continued to learn, we continued to study. I continued to take the train, at least my first year in rabbinical school. I took the train from Trenton, New Jersey to the academy in Riverdale, 3 hours each way, 4 days a week. And I remember sometimes coming in, there'd be a snowstorm, and I'd get to class just at 9, being very proud I got there on time, to be told that there was no classes that day. But I know the academy students travel far and wide to come, so mine's not such a unique story. But I think that the people who are involved in the school in its early days, we really owe our tip our yarmulkes to them, because they've really held us together to enable it to achieve its status today. I don't know of any other people whose names come to mind right now who I would say were so influential as Rabbi Gelber. He wrote a book, by the way, called The Failure of the American Rabbi. I brought it with me. I found it in my library. And I remember I think the thesis of this is, at least I think it is from when I once read it, was the idea that he felt rabbis really should be independent in a way, that their finances should come from whatever their business is or wherever, and so that they could devote their lives spiritually and educationally, emotionally to a congregation without having to depend upon the congregation for their livelihood. That is, they could be independent thinkers and not worry about whether they would lose their job as a result of not greeting Mrs. Goldberg or Chaim Yankel in a proper fashion. And I remember this book from my early days. He also he was a playwright and had written a book called Job Stands Up, and all of the people at the academy who I felt were teaching here in the early days were so well educated and so involved in many ways in Jewish life. I think that's my thoughts about those early days.
So, thank you for this fascinating time together, Rabbi Irvin Unger of California, of the Academy.
Mm-hmm.
May you go forward in peace and health and great things for spreading the work of authorship. And May your connection with the Academy be long and strong.
Thank you, Peg. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to say a few words about my journey too. Thanks.